Everybody has to be $1 billion founder. Everybody has to have hundreds of millions of dollars. Everybody has to be a person of notoriety. Everybody has to be a person of fame.
10, 15 years ago, entrepreneurship really wasn't that cool. Become a buzzword. It's almost become
Truth Now podcast. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. I had a wonderful conversation with your now wife, Natalie, and it was amazing. She was a couple episodes back, and now we get to interview the other half of the Hunters, Mr. Michael Hunter. So good to see you, man. And I hope you've had a good holiday season as well. Was the holidays good for you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Definitely nice time of year to take the pedal off the gas just a little bit for a couple days, and then now full steam ahead prepping for next year.
Yeah, 2024 is one of those years I think everybody just cohesively is excited for. What's exciting for you for 2024?
Yeah, 2024 it's a big year in my personal life. Obviously, recently married, and so that's a big milestone. And also on the business front, 2024 is like our year of overnight success, 8 years in the making. So it's like, we've been on the grind for the past 8 years, and 2023 was the setup year, and 2024, everything's pointing towards it being a really big year for us in the business.
Yeah, man, that's so exciting. And for everybody listening out there, Michael and I have been friends for a couple years. He's an amazing entrepreneur, an even better human being. And one of the things that really I found interesting that I thought would be a great way to discuss on the show, especially because we were talking about authenticity before, Michael has built an amazing business through the lens of personal morals and values and decisions. And, he shared some things with me in private I thought was just really powerful and captivating. And I wanted to just bring this up here to everybody else who's thinking about starting a business in 2024, who's maybe in the grind of their business. They're might be getting dangled a little bit of that golden parachute, right? Or those golden handcuffs, or even just a lot of money from a VC or an angel investor comes in, or they're seeing a ton of revenue coming in and they want to build this $1 billion rocket ship. So, Michael, to me, has, let's just say, experienced a lot of times where he's been given carrots and he didn't take them. And yeah, Michael, I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about, Spiffy, your company, what you guys do. How did the origin, the genesis story of Spiffy? How did you guys get started with that?
I'll start with like what Spiffy is, and then kind of talk about how we backed into it. But Spiffy, we are the go-to checkout solution for digital entrepreneurs, and work with a lot of big name influencers. They use our checkout system to sell their online courses, their product services. A lot of freelancers, agencies, coaches, consultants use our software. And how Spiffy was born was actually out of our marketing agency. So back in 2010, I started a marketing agency, and we niched down to working with authors, speakers, coaches, experts, thought leaders, personal brands, and influencers, kind of that whole market. People that wrote New York Times best-selling books, just servicing them, building their websites, building their funnels, building run their ads campaigns end to end, and used all of the software out there and found a pain point in the marketplace around payments that everyone just was slightly missing the mark on, and saw an opportunity for us to build the tool that we wished that we had, servicing our clients. And so essentially that's the genesis of Spiffy, and how the idea came about.
You make it sound so simple. It was just an idea that just came to you.
Well, I mean, yeah, to dive into that just a little bit further, in working with clients, we knew that we wanted to transition from a service-based agency into a software company. And one of the best ways to do that is to intimately know the pain points and challenges of the market that you're serving. And so what better way to get paid to learn than to start an agency, become a freelancer, and start working with your ideal clients to start knowing their pain points and challenges intimately. So, that's what we did. And in hindsight, obviously, I'm giving you the dots connected, looking backwards. Right at the times, sometimes they don't, appear when you're in it. They don't appear to connect as fluidly as the retrospective. But we actually had about 20 different software ideas, all that were $1 million plus ideas, and then we had about 3 that we thought could be $50 to $100 million ideas, and through a vetting process, we just executed against the one that had the highest upside potential with the least amount of risk. And so, if you're going to build a business, and it takes about the same amount of sweat, equity, blood, tears,
Yeah,
sleepless
right.
nights. And so you may as well, build something that has the highest upside potential possible based off of your current resources and skills and the least downside risk. So that's what we did.
You talked about intimately knowing the pain points of your clients. And I think that's a great way to jump right into, the theme of today's conversation, with morals and values in business and also building relationships. You're a guy that really prioritizes your relationships, not just with your business partner, Jeremy, but also with your team and also with the people that you work with as clients. I remember when we had met a couple of years ago, you were still taking sales calls. Like you could have easily hired reps to do all that work for you. But I remember something you told me when we were staying there, and I never forgot this. And I said, man, you're taking all these sales calls. Like you were doing every single demo and you were doing these sales calls. You said it's important for me to know who these people are buying from me. So I want you to talk to me about that in terms of when you talk about intimacy and of knowing the pain points of clients, of knowing your clients. Where do you start and how do you cultivate that?
It's 100% through conversation. And I think especially when it comes to internet marketing, online entrepreneurship, one of the biggest myths is that you can do $1 million launch hiding behind a keyboard without having to talk to anyone, and nothing could be further from the truth. I can just launch an online course and make $500,000 a year without taking a call, without any meetings, without any of the things. And maybe someone got really lucky and that's their story, but that's not the path. The path is, grabbing Zoom calls, grabbing coffee in person, sitting across the table from someone, understanding how you can help them, and developing products and services that can fulfill that need. And to your point, I mean, even to this day, I still take, customer service calls, high level customer service calls. I still take sales demo calls. And it's really important as a founder of a business to not get too far detached from knowing who your target customer is and the pain points that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. Part of my personal story as well is actually taking a job at a big tech company where there was, massively successful company, raised hundreds of millions of dollars, was prepping to go public. They brought in all this Silicon Valley executive team that knew how to build software companies, and the team and the passion and the energy of the founders kind of got shelved and put to the side because these tech executives who knew better, knew how to run things of this bigger business. And I saw how that was actually detrimental to that business. And so, it's neither right nor wrong. I'm sure it's hindered our growth in some capacity too. But for us, being a product focused company, just, not getting too big for your britches, not having too much ego as a founder of a company to just sit across the table, so to speak, across the camera from somebody who's one of your customers, and having those conversations, I think, is very important.
Something that was interesting that you said was, you found that the energy of the founding team kind of died a little bit, at that tech experience job. It just it kind of dissipated. It went away. And I see that, and I'm sure you've seen that too a lot with tech founders, is that the excitement of building something new, about scaling something big is there. People get really excited. You start making your first hires, and then, you grow and scale the team. And it's these external forces that founders bring in that are not part of the root or kind of the heart and soul of the company that often, kill it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that tends to be the status quo when you're bringing in outside consultants or executives, or, maybe not consultants, but outside firms that are giving money or have worked somewhere else. Why do you think that happens?
I think it's quite simple. It's literally just coming back to knowing the market and intimately knowing who your customer is, intimately knowing your product, and knowing how you're serving that customer. Customer support is the face of the company, and after you get tons of layers of management and entry level customer support people, that customer level that support person is the brand. And when you have high turnover in those customer facing roles, and you're hiring people who treat it just as a job versus it being something that they're actually passionate for, you can feel the difference. The customers can feel the difference. And so that's where like the magic of a startup, the magic of a small business, the magic of that company growing, and the excitement of the employees showing up to work, taking pride and ownership, and seeing how, them being one of a team of 20 or one of a team of 50, they're playing a critical role in the growth of that business. Once you get to be a really big business, that's where it's just the natural progression of business, at least from my experience, is to lose a little bit of that magic. And ultimately, I think it comes from companies trying to scale too fast and hire too fast. As we've talked about previously, that's one thing that we've decided not to do, is grow as fast as possible. We want slow, steady growth, have our focus on our customers, hire the right people at the right time, and maintain that magic for as long as possible.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting approach that you're taking too, because conventional wisdom, right? Or like, I should put air quotes, like conventional wisdom will tell you that, hey, you got something here, you have traction. Why not just take some outside money? Why not just take some big angel money? You could probably raise a couple $1,000,000 easily, from what you've shared with me. And you could next 18, 24 months be, at least high 8 figures easily, if not more. And you've told me no. You told me that's not what I want to do. That's not what Jeremy wants to do. That's not what the team wants to do. Slow, steady growth. So how did you get everybody to buy into that? Because it is against the grain.
It is. And, to be fully transparent, if it were up to me, I would have probably raised money a couple of years ago. And so it was actually the influence of my business partner, Jeremy, and us having deep discussions where I was probably, 60-40 towards raising money and not, and he was probably 60-40 towards not raising money. It's through our conversations that, have influenced our decision not to yet. And it's not saying that we never will, but it's one of my big passions, and one thing that I want to have a more vocal voice and influence in the entrepreneurship community is that a lot of times people think they have to go raise money to even get started on their idea, or if they don't go raise money, that their idea is not legitimate enough. Like all the real companies go and raise venture capital, and nothing could be further from the truth. Those are the companies that you see in the headlines, on the front pages of newspapers, on the picture, that there are plastered everywhere, because the VCs do that because they're playing the VC game, which is, a lot of, leading with growth metrics versus actual profits. And so, nothing is sexier than building a profitable business. Early on in my life, I recognized that one of my core values was freedom, and the ability to do what I want when I want. And so when you take money from someone, it's not it's not always or as beautiful of an experience as it's portrayed to be. We celebrate, these companies raising 5, 10, 20, 50, $100 million, when, they're essentially going and getting 5, 10, 20, $100 million in debt. Right. So I don't know, it's these weird concepts where just because it's the way it seems everyone's doing it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way, and doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way either.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I remember, I want to say maybe like pre-COVID, like 2019, 2018, you could raise money with just an idea. You could walk into somebody's office and be like, I have an idea. And they'd be like, great, what is it? It's a software company. Great, here's your money. And it was like very easy to do that. And the landscape has
Totally.
changed a lot now. It's changed drastically. And I think the freedom aspect that you mentioned here, I'm seeing more entrepreneurs, kind of the light bulb goes on where they go, oh, maybe I really should really should prioritize profit rather than taking all this VC money that I'm going to owe somebody later. And now they have a third of my company or even a half of my company. Something that you said, though, that was interesting was your partner, Jeremy. You guys were kind of like the 60-40. You were, or he was 40-60, you were 60-40. One of the things I really love to dive into is partnership. So you have this emphasis and this focus of intimately getting to know your clients. When it comes to business partners, though, I would imagine it's almost the exact same thing. Before you jump, the two of you jump into business together, you got to know who you're dealing with. There's a lot of misinformation on how to, quote, shop for a business partner or finding somebody that can be an integrator into the business. You and Jeremy have worked before in a business together, and you guys have built Spiffy to what it is now. How did you guys come to agreeing to work in a partnership together? What were the shared morals and values that you guys have? How did you guys spend time with each other? How do you guys continue to spend time with each other? Because it's almost like another marriage. Speaking of marriage that we were mentioning earlier, it's like a second marriage that you're in right now.
Totally. Yeah. I always say that Jeremy was my first marriage. So yeah. And Jeremy was not my first business partnership. And I had some business partnerships in the past that were not good. And, I was actually more apprehensive to form a business partnership than I think the average person would be. And so it is a critically important business. I would say bad business partnerships are probably, the second leading cause to business failures. It's very important that you're on the same page with your business partner, not only with like what you want to do and who you want to serve, but like, for example, like one of my, past business partnerships, great human, like one of the most beautiful people ever on this planet. He's since passed away since we were working together. Who he was as a person, just how he treated every single conversation, still impacts me to this day. How friendly, how outgoing, how fearless he was. At the same time, we had much different, what I call money blueprints. To him, $1,000 was like hitting the lottery. And to me, $1,000 was like, all right, great. We can pay our rent this month. Like next, like we got to get that times 100, type of a thing. Right. So yeah. Even if someone's an amazing person, even if they're fearless, there's still things that are very important conversations to have. And it's very important to treat it like you're going into a marriage and like talking about the different things, making sure that neither person, especially when you're starting a business, there can't be any greed involved. Like you got to protect the business first and build the golden egg and live off of the eggs that the golden goose is producing, right? And so you have to, like that as a metaphor is an important ideal to kind of how to think about it. Like what qualities does the person need to have in order to raise a golden goose together? And ultimately that's what, Jeremy and I have done. Also having a long-term vision, when you're starting a brand new company, you're probably better off going and getting a job for the first 5 years. And so you need to go into it knowing that your income is most likely going to be lower than it would be for the first 5 to 7 years. And there's other trade-offs, that are more valuable to you than just the money, as far as time freedom, flexibility, working remotely, working from anywhere, all those things are great. And not everyone performs well in that environment either. So I also think that, one of my other things I'm really passionate about is 10, 15 years ago, entrepreneurship really wasn't that cool. It's become a buzzword. It's almost become like, if you're not an entrepreneur, then you're not trying in life. When I also don't think that the path of entrepreneurship, I don't think everyone's cut out for entrepreneurship either. So I think that's also another important message where, if you get onto Facebook these days, you just get hit with ads from the Grant Cardones and the Gary V's of the world, talking about hustle, 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 build, 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 grind, 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 side hustle this, side hustle that, invest in real estate. And it's like, that's great for some people, but that's not necessarily in the cards for everyone. That doesn't light everyone up. And so I think it's easy to get wrapped up in what society thinks is success, where in my life, time freedom and flexibility is the ultimate flex, not the Ferrari in the garage. There's a lot of people that have the Ferrari, the Lambo, the house, and they have to grind 16-hour days just to afford the lifestyle that they created. They've created a really beautiful jail cell for themselves versus actually being able to spend time doing the things you want to do when you want to do it. So also redefining success, what success is, what it looks like, is something that's really important to me too.
It's almost like it's like that phrase, people crying in their Ferraris, with like
Yeah.
it's like the golden handcuffs, right? You see a lot of that, and it gets perpetuated all over social media. It really does. It's this idea of everybody has to be a billion-dollar founder. Everybody has to have hundreds of millions of dollars. Everybody has to be a person of notoriety. Everybody has to be a person of fame, and nobody can just be a builder, or somebody that doesn't have to launch the personal brand, or somebody that doesn't have to make content every single day. And I think there's this notion for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you've seen this too, where they feel this pressure that they have to build this personal brand, and they have to build a company, and they have to have 100,000 followers, and they have to be able to do direct to consumer, and they have to get into real estate, and they have to do all these things. And what happens is that all those distractions end up pulling you away from the one thing that you wanted to do in the first place, was build the business. How do you, and I don't, and you're one of those people that's actually a true builder. You do a lot of sales and you do a lot of marketing, but you're not on content making reels every single day. You'll contribute, I'm sure, to this podcast, and you've done shows before, but that was a decision that you made.
I mean, part of it is just out of my personal story. In 2010, I started my marketing agency as a social media marketing agency. I built it to be, one of the most notable social media companies in Phoenix, Arizona. It wasn't a big agency, but just in that small business community, was a go-to. Enough so that I got recruited to run social media with my friend Heather Dobson at the fastest growing software company in Arizona. So I got recruited, joined their marketing team, and lived and breathed social media all day, every day for 5 years, day in, day out, nights, weekends. And so part of it was being in that. And then also, even after I left that tech company, going back to my agency and running Facebook ads and doing social media stuff like that. So I was deep into the social media game very early on. I would argue that I was one of the pioneers of corporate social media. Like we had to go and convince the leadership that Facebook ads were a good place to spend money when they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on Google ads. We're like, hey, let's spend 10K over here. Numbers are metaphorical, but it's like to give you an example, like that's how early in the game, I was operating at a pretty high level when it came to social media and business. Literally the week after Facebook opened their business pages for small businesses is when I started my company. I realized I've been doing the social media thing for the past 6-7 years. I have a skill that's marketable in the marketplace. These businesses have no idea what they're doing on social media. So that was kind of how that idea formed. I think especially with, being a consumer on social media, it's easy to think that the way that other people are building their business through content is the only way to build a business, and nothing could be further from the truth. Huge companies were built before social media ever existed. Is it a great tool to grow and scale a business? Absolutely. But just posting content on social media, just running ads on Facebook doesn't necessarily mean that you're building a business. You might be getting attention, you might be getting sales, but it's not necessarily building a business. For me, one of my litmus tests of of a business is, if you step away from your business for 30 days, does it maintain itself or does it grow without your direct input? And if it doesn't at least maintain itself or grow, then based off my personal opinion and my personal definition, then it's not a business. It's still something that is, ultimately in that self-employed category. And so again, that's where kind of full loop. It's like focusing on building a true business, focusing on building systems and processes, using social media as one avenue of acquiring customers, but then also being very intentional about other avenues as well is something that's very, very important. And oftentimes the time input for building on, of creating the content, editing the content, publishing the content, oftentimes that's not necessarily the fastest path to get started or the fastest way to grow. It's a great way to test different messaging because there's low risk, high, you can iterate and test things quickly and things of that nature. So yeah, that's kind of some of my thoughts on social media and why I haven't, why social media hasn't been a main focus for growing Spiffy to where it's at today.
So if somebody wanted to build their business or step away from their business, according to this litmus test that you have, outside of systems and processes, I would think people would be the big one, to find somebody who can be the button pusher, pulling the levers in your business. Talk to me about how someone who's listening to this right now might have an agency, might have a, company that, they're the bottleneck and they knowingly are the bottleneck and they embrace it almost. But they do have bigger dreams. They do have bigger aspirations to walk away from it and build a real business. How does one get started in doing that?
I would say that it's actually detrimental to do it too early, right? Like I was mentioning too, it's like being in the weeds, like having that relationship with the customers, and having a longer term vision, understanding that there's kind of this 5 to 7 year run that you're going to be on. And like, you might be the bottleneck for quite some time. And to answer your point, how do you get out of it? Is you simplify. Like figure out what are the needle movers to get the end result. Just because you can do all these other things doesn't mean that you should. The only way that you can get yourself out of the business is by streamlining, systematizing, and creating processes to get a predictable and repeatable result. It's very, very important. So when you are the sole person in your business, it's really easy to take on this custom project here, take on this client that's kind of sort of not really a good fit because you know these systems, these tools really well, or you know Facebook ads really well, and you can kind of make it work and get a result. But like, in order to hire a team that can implement and get a predictable, repeatable result, you have to get really, really focused on who your target customer is and what value you provide to them. I think Apple is a really good example of this, just to like use an example that virtually everyone can relate to, is that, Apple has arguably been, since the late 2000s, like 7, 8, 9 was when like iTunes came out, and it was like Apple was like the powerhouse in music. It wasn't until like just like a year or two ago that Apple came out with like their over-ear headphones. Like that's 15 years later. They have like $800 billion in the bank account. They could have easily acquired a company. I think they did acquire Beats or something at some point, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they acquired Beats.
But I mean, like just recently, can you go into the Apple store and buy over-ear headphones? Just recently did they get into like the AirPod game. You still can't get a giant monitor that's like an Apple, they obviously have Apple TV, that's like the device that you plug into your TV, but Apple makes computer screens. They could easily build flat screen TVs, but they don't.
Yeah, that's what I mean, dude. That's so funny you said that, because like I was thinking about this the other night. I was watching, like, we have our TV, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, like I'm looking over to left it right over my shoulders, my TV that I had, and I have an Apple TV there. And I was like, why hasn't Apple developed their own Apple TV? Like an 80-inch flat screen where it's like the integration of Apple TV. I don't understand why that is.
I have my MacBook Pro plugged in with a HDMI cable into, a 24-inch monitor that's a different brand than Apple, right? And it's like, why doesn't, Apple has like the desktop iMac that has like the computer and the screen all in one, but why don't they have the screen, they built the screen, it's in one of their products. Why don't they just create screens that I can use at my desk setup with my laptop and plug it in? But they don't, right? And so again, it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. And Apple, I think, is a great example of a cash-rich business that literally can invest an R&D department to create anything, but they don't. They focus on doing a few things really well. They focus on creating what we call an integrated product suite or a logical product progression. And
Yeah,
you
that's
buy the
good.
iPhone first, and then you're like, oh man, this is sweet. Oh, I really wish my text messages came through on my computer. That would be really helpful. So then you buy the laptop and you're like, oh man, like when I'm on the plane, my phone's too small and don't want to pull up my laptop. So I got to get the iPad, and they all work together. Right. And so thinking about that logical product progression in your business, that's really, an important thing and concept and strategy where it's so simple. And we're talking about right now, and it sounds so logical, but very few people actually do it.
Well, especially because the word logical was in there too. You would think it'd have to be, it would have
Yeah,
to be logical.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And I mean, logical for the customer. It's like the logical product
right.
progression where like
Yeah.
the customer can see it, but then like as a strategy in your business, it sounds too simple. It sounds almost trite or cliche, or it's just like, it can't be that easy. Oftentimes a lot of people they try to do too many different things that aren't synergistic, and they feel like they're spinning a lot of different plates versus like focusing in one thing, in one topic, one area, and building different products that people can ascend through.
Yeah, just getting really good. I think for everybody out there, just getting really good at what one has moved the needle in your business, and two, trusting and knowing that you will get better the more you hone in on your craft of the thing that you do really well. And I think that's something that I've seen and learned from you just as a founder is that you guys are focusing on optimizing checkouts. You're focusing on creating more money for businesses. Could you do other things? Absolutely. You could definitely probably expand your services, especially from the marketing aspect, but you don't. You focus on compromise their morals and their values for funding. They compromise their morals and values to try to get rich quick. And so they don't have to work again. And they figure, oh, I can sacrifice this or I can get rid of that just to make a ton of money. And then I'll just go back to being to this like altruistic person. Well said, my friend. Thank you for coming on the show. And thanks to all of you for tuning into this week's episode of the Live Your Truth Now podcast. If you like what you heard, go ahead and give us a follow on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you saw, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel where we